updates using a newer set of American Community Survey data. And the data that we have seen indicates about a 1% drop in Minnesota's share of that, the formula population nationally. So that might mean a slight decrease in our total federal appropriation, and we'll have a chance to look at that more closely later today. And then it's still an open question. It's still way out in the future yet. You might have also saw a Literacy Action Network update from Eric Neschheim earlier this year. We're still awaiting the President's budget proposal for Federal 18, which would be the 18-19 program year. And my understanding from our National Association of State Directors, lobbyists, is that they're still anticipating about a 13.5% cut nationally to adult basic education, and they're anticipating that that budget would be released sometime during the week of the 22nd of May. So that's the update on the federal side. On the state side, it looks like, again, as Eric noted in his email that he sent out, there is no cut to the appropriation for adult basic ed, and so there'll be full funding of the formula. Probably the growth rate this year will come in at around just under 1%. Remember, that's a rolling 10-year average, and so people should see we will have a slight increase in the total appropriation for adult ed funding for fiscal year 2017-2018. Obviously, how much any given program, any variation in funding for any given program will be in part a function as well of changing contact hours. So good news is no cuts in the short term and perhaps a small increase in the state appropriation.
Okay, thank you, Todd. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jody to give us a little bit of an update on our federal ABE provider competitive grants.
So I'm happy to report that we're getting close to the end of the federal competitive grant process. The official grant reviews have been finished. We have received feedback from the workforce board. And now the final step in the process is for our office to make final funding decisions. So we are working on that. Our deadline for that is the end of May. However, we're optimistic that those final decisions could go out to you sooner than that. Just a heads up that in some cases there will be applicants who are approved for funding but will be required to do some additional follow-up and receive some additional technical assistance from our office based on things that came out of the review and the feedback for those applications. But excuse me, be watching for those official decisions on federal funding soon.
Excellent. Thank you, Jody.
We do have one question about someone thought it could be the end of May that was coming out. Did we see that last week?
Nope, the official deadline for getting that information back to programs has always been May 31st. But like I say, we're hoping to potentially get it out sooner than that.
Excellent. Thank you, Jody. Also, in terms of, speaking of grants, we have our annual ABE grant form that is posted. It was posted last month, and that is on the Minnesota Department of Education website in their grants pages. And it does include some updated assurances that we discussed in the grant application session. Remember, this application is an electronic submission, and it is required for those seeking federal funding and state funding, or state funding, I should say. So if you're just a state-funded entity, you need to submit this. If you're a state and federally funded entity, you need to submit this application. And that is all going through SERVS. You need to submit it via SERVS. And the application includes an application form and tables that you need to submit for this grant. And they are due the end of the day, June 1st. Now, one thing we've been warning folks is make sure that you're checking your CERS information to make sure that you are reauthorized. Every person within CERS needs to be reauthorized every year, once a year, by your agency head or by your superintendent. And so the last thing you want to see happen is at the end of the day, June 1st, when you're trying to submit all of this via CERS, you find out you actually don't have any access to CERS. So please make sure you're going in there now and checking and getting this done. We have the application set up so that ideally you could submit this already here in May. You don't have to wait until later when you get your funding announcement for the federal funding. You can actually submit this now once you have your contact hours and data in there. So please get that done early. Don't wait till June 1st. And if you have any questions about the CERS access, we put Melody's information on the screen, so you can always talk with Melody. How on earth do I say her name, Lori?
Pomeranke.
Pomeranke, Melody Pomeranke. And we have her telephone number on the screen here. Anything else you want to say about the CERS access piece?
It's actually referred to as the CERS recertification process. So if you go onto the CERS site, look for that term in order to, well, your superintendent or agency head needs to look for the recertification process.
Excellent. Thank you, Lori. I also just wanted to just do a couple notes. I'm not going to walk through these tables like we did at the grant application meeting, but I just want to highlight one thing about the staffing table, and that is just some clarification from our Metro session. In the Metro session, we had questions about what is an local administrator versus a local counselor versus a local paraprofessional. To answer those questions, I really encourage you to go to Jenny's and the Urban Planet descriptions of those three staffing levels. They might have talked about that in their data training, but they do have that as part of their SID guide, as part of their database guide. So we really encourage you to look to that to answer any of those questions. So that's important to note. It's always a good rule of thumb. Just do what Jenny and Mary tell you to do. Okay. Then I also want to make one quick note about Table A, and that's our contact hour table. So it's important to know that that again this year there's some changes to those contact hours for what's state and federally funded and what's just state funded. This year is the first year that we are allowing all of the 6 ABE levels, as well as all the 6 ESL levels, for state and federal funding. So it's just that those with no level assigned, conditional work referral, work-based project learners, and official GED testing hours that are state-only funded. But all the ABE contact hours and ESL contact hours are countable for ABE contact hours. Okay, so that is everything there. One other thing about data entry. So one thing I want to say about data entry is that not only do you have to have all of your data from May 1st to April 30th submitted and entered for those tables, especially because you're going to be submitting Table A, the contact hour table, but we have another data deadline that's coming up. All of your July to June data needs to be entered and completed by July 31st, 2017. We will be asking for an email of level gains, the Table 4, what we traditionally call Table 4, and Table 5, specifically the diploma attainment. And we'll be asking for that by Friday, August 4th, and that can be emailed to Sherry. And so we will we'll need that from you, and we'll send an announcement as we get closer to the time just to remind you of that. Some of the data, just in case you're wondering what data needs to be completed, we need you to enter all new students, all your tests, all your contact hours, all the diplomas earned, that's a locally issued diploma as well as the state issued diploma, and any other NRS required information. So please be aware of that and keep on top of that. The database trainings that have been going on, and I think there's still another one yet today, those are all important and kind of help guide you through this process. With the data, we will be producing a report card for the 2016-2017 data, and it will include level completions, diploma and GED attainments, post-secondary entry, and employment outcomes for local programs. And this will be a more comprehensive, this will be a similarly comprehensive report card as you saw in preparation for the federal competitive application. This will likely be released in fall or winter, and that is because of some of the timelines to produce some of this data take a little bit longer now because we're submitting more data with the report card. And it's also important that this next year, starting July 1, we are implementing the full WIOA accountability measures. However, we are not fully trained yet on what it means to fully implement all those WIOA measures. So we are receiving additional federal funding over the course of the summer and this fall. And as we get more information and more training available to us, we'll be sharing that with you right away. Let's take a moment to just take some questions about the annual application, the federal announcements, or anything else, data or whatever else folks might have about what we've covered thus far. I did want to take a quick note. You can feel free again to chat in your questions or click and raise your hand and we can unmute you and call on you. I just wanted to point out that Todd did announce that he did get a federal estimated award letter for 2017-18, and our regular federal appropriation will be about $25,000 less than this last year, and that the IELCE Civics funding will actually increase by about $15,000. So it's close to level funding, but about $10,000 overall less than what we saw last year, or for this current year.
And Karen is looking for a clarification that the 15-16 report card was from July 1 to June 30th, right? And from now on, report cards will follow that timeline of July 1 to June 30th, and that is correct.
Yes, correct on both counts.
So basically, that is our programming timeline for a lot of things. That's kind of our standard year at this point, our standard fiscal year and programmatic year. And the only year that's slightly off from that is the contact hour counting, which is in state statute. And so the contact hour year is the May to April. Good clarification. Any other questions?
I've got a question coming in. Looking for guidance as to what counts as post-secondary training versus post-secondary education. How should we handle CNA, ServSafe, etc.?
Question.
Is that question specific to how do you record that in the database, or more generally, are you looking for just a distinction between those two? I can tell you that I generally lump them together in my mind, and I think of post-secondary education and training as really referring to very similar things. For example, you know, in Minnesota, where the technical and community college system is essentially a combined system, really that sort of differentiation isn't necessarily made. For data matching purposes, I guess this would be one of the differences that we have is currently when we data match, looking for evidence of ABE participant enrollment in post-secondary education or training, we're only able to data match to education or training institutions that are associated with, actually primarily we've been doing our data match with the Minnesota state system, so the public two-year college system. We do also have access to and are exploring doing a further match that would be to any institution that receives is state grant eligible. But there are certainly many other training programs that we don't have access to through data matching, for example, apprenticeships that might be through unions or through particular companies, training provided by private nonprofits like Goodwill Easter Seals, and so really anything that is education that typically would be undertaken by somebody who has completed high school, or actually I should say is even beyond high school attendance age, is something that we would be interested in counting. Making the distinction isn't that important, but recognizing, so things, for example, like certified nurse assistant, certified home health care aide, even though those are certifications that may, and trainings that may not require even a high school credential to participate in, we would still consider those to be post-secondary education or training. And I'd be happy to talk further if you're looking for more specific.
And I think a couple of clarifying points that we should make about this is just clarifying that for the report card, what we're reporting is the level completions that you're submitting, the diplomas that you're submitting in SID, but GED, post-secondary, and employment outcomes for the report card are really just data matched via GED database, the MinSCU and higher ed database that we have access to data match, and the employment outcomes. We completely acknowledge that this is an undercount, but we have to have verified data matching for this work with the feds. And so we're going to provide additional clarification about what you can enter locally and what can be done locally this fall. But please note that for the report card purposes, that we're just looking at what we can data match there because that aligns to what we actually are able to report to the feds.
And Sherry, if you do have questions specifically about how to record that information in SID, best person to contact to start with would be Mary Zimmerly. And then if you and or Mary had additional questions, then you could follow up by contacting one of us here at the state office.
Excellent. Any other questions? Oh, Sherry said that Mary said to talk to you, Todd. Isn't it great when we get in a cycle here?
So that means, Sherry, I'll follow up with Mary and see if we can make sure that we're on the same page, and that way maybe she can get back to you with specifics.
Excellent. And I think a lot of this will have to kind of wait till this fall. It might wait till this fall as we get more data match and more knowledgeable about the accountability requirements. It'll probably be wrapped up into that training. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Julie now to give us an update on the IELCE Civics grant.
This is just a reminder that the applications are due May 22nd, and that the grant would go from July 17th of this year through 2019. If you received one, you would have to send in an updated work plan and budget. I put a link in here for more information that will take you to the MDE grants page where we have the application on there, the budget form, and any questions and answers in regards to that application have also been posted there. They were posted in late April. If you have any further information or questions regarding the IELCE Civics grant, feel free to contact me. And I just want to make another plug. We still need a few more reviewers, hopefully from individuals that are with consortium or programs or sites that aren't submitting a civics application. If you are interested in that, please contact me.
Are there any questions right now about the upcoming or the grant application for IELCE Civics that's due May 22nd? Again, to ask questions, you can either click to raise your hand on the left-hand side of that little control panel, or you can type in your questions about the IELCE Civics grant, upcoming grant application that's due May 22nd. While you're doing that or typing in those questions, let's just do a reminder for those that are current grantees whose grant is expiring or ending on June 30th.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for all of you current grantees, where your grant is about to end, you are going to receive a narrative performance and final financial report from Sherry about the 2016-2017 year, and that'll be coming out later this month. Those reports are due at the end of July.
And then, Julie, we have a question about the application that's due this month.
Mm-hmm.
For the work plan, what type of format are we looking for, a narrative or a table format?
It does not specify in the application. I'm assuming, or I would assume that it would be a narrative format, but you can, I would think, include tables in that. I'm looking at Lori right now because she's worked with some of the grants. There's nothing preventing you from inserting a table. Does that answer? Let the chat.
So again,
yeah.
Again, the advice would be you could do whatever is easiest for you, but also think about, since this is a competitive grant, think about what's easier for reviewers to process and understand. So you always want to do what is going to give you the most points and make it as easy as possible on the reviewers.
Yes, and then another question regarding, we're looking at reviewers as soon as we get the applications in that week of May 22nd. We will be sending out applications to reviewers, and I believe they have 3 weeks to review the applications. We'd like reviewers, we're looking at having each reviewer review 3 applications and score it. It's all done electronically. We will not be meeting in person. And then hopefully making the announcement late June, early July.
Great. Okay. Any other questions about IELTS Civics? Any of our team getting any questions chatted into them? Okay. Well, let's go to the next topic then. Julie, it's still with you to talk about transitions updates.
Okay, thanks. And we're going to move through these fairly quickly. Everyone should have received an email that was sent out this week regarding a Summer Scholars Academy. I just found out about this through the Minnesota State office. They sent it out. I'm so happy that they've included this opportunity for adult basic education learners. And if you'd like more information, please go to the link that's included on this slide. They've set AccuPlacer scores needed to enter the program. And I just wanted to mention that these are mostly metro area community colleges. This is, I believe it's free tuition. It's a grant that a private funder decided to support. But if you have any learners you think might qualify and would be interested, please refer them to this information.
And if you want to click on that link, you can either type that in, or remember, we do have the material. If you click on the materials in your control panel, you'll get a PDF of this slideshow where you can go directly to the link or click on the link there.
Okay, a reminder, the process for nominating an ABE representative to the local workforce development board. A form was sent to all the current representatives, and we're asking that they submit that form back by June 30th. I've received several already, so thank you for those who have done it. And it's just to document the process that's being used within your workforce service area to nominate an ABE representative. And I want to clarify that's a nomination from the ABE providers in that area. It does not necessarily mean the board has to accept the nomination. Navigating and Advising Support Services Legislative Grant. Grantees should have received an amended official grant award notification email from Lori. The only change was a change in the grant timeline. And if you need a financial reporting form, contact Lori.
We have a question. We have a hand raised. Russ Frankel. Russ, we're going to unmute you and then you can feel free to ask your question, but you are also self-muted, so you need to unmute yourself by clicking on the little microphone tab and unmuting yourself so you can ask us the question.
You need to unmute yourself, Russ.
Russ, click on the little microphone tab on your control panel so that you can unmute yourself and talk with us. Oh, his hand went down.
I put it down.
Oh, okay.
All right, can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you, Russ.
Okay, great. Well, it had to do with the question about, let's see, the former slide, if you could pull that up.
The process for nominating a rep?
Right, right. And I guess, Julie, the question I had there was, to what degree do you know if the workforce development boards have a particular process that they follow for a change, for instance, in a person that's on the board? So we have a situation where someone will be departing from that role in one of the regions that I'm part of, and I'm just wondering how, I'm assuming they would have some type of replacement process that they typically follow, a protocol for that, and I'm curious how that then syncs with this process that you're trying to get a better feel for.
Sure, absolutely. That's a common question that I've received. The boards do have a process for filling the positions on the board, and each board can set up and dictate their own processes. Some of them have handbooks and have it all really detailed, and others it's more casual. Anyways, that's different from what this is asking. What this is asking is that the ABE providers represented in that local workforce service area or development area identify the process that they are going to use among themselves to nominate one person to the board. They can nominate that person to the board. The board has ultimate decision-making power to accept the nomination or deny the nomination. That's different than, and that would go by the schedule that the local workforce board would develop for filling that. So there is a process that they're going to have established already to fill those positions. Yeah. And there's a process already established when people have to step down or emergencies happen or whatever and someone has to leave. So I would contact the board chair or the workforce director, and I'm more than happy to help with that, to ask what that process is for filling that vacant position.
Okay, that's fine. I was just seeing the relationship between the fact that this is going to get announced relatively soon. There's probably going to be some invitation by the board from ABE folks to apply for it. I guess what I'm hearing you say is that what you'd like to have worked out is that the ABE folks have some form of communication that's proactive prior to that so that they can maybe work through what would be the best suited person for that role?
That's exactly what this is supposed to do. Yeah.
So, Russ, this is Todd. We have intentionally not imposed a requirement about that process across the various workforce board areas because they differ so much throughout the state. And actually, a couple of years ago, when we had asked for feedback from ABE program managers, the feedback we got was, don't dictate a process. We can figure out a process amongst ourselves.
Okay.
And so I think some of what Julie is asking for is basically a description of how those processes have evolved or what they are currently. But also, it is good to keep in mind that certainly early on under WIOA, some of the workforce board directors were under the impression that they could sort of control whoever they might appoint to that ABE seat. But in fact, that ABE seat is representative of the ABE community in Minnesota, and we take that to mean that basically the collective of ABE programs that serve that workforce board service area, basically can say to the board, this is the person we want to represent us.
Right.
And as Julie said, final decision is up to the board, but I would think they'd have to have an awfully good reason for rejecting that request from the ABE community. So as long as the local ABE directors can agree on one person who is going to represent them and take that seat, then you can take that information to the board and say, this is the person we would like representing the ABE community on this board.
Do you happen to know if there's a process in which they identify an alternate in the event an ABE person cannot, attend a particular meeting?
I think that would, the boards may well have, but I think that could certainly be part of the decision was made locally.
Yeah.
So amongst the ABE managers, let's say, for example, that there are a half dozen ABE consortia represented in that workforce service area. There could be the person who sort of holds the seat. And then I would assume that, again, you might want to check with the board director, but I would assume that you could have a designated substitute who would show up at meetings that the main designee could not attend. Again, I would be very surprised if they wouldn't be agreeable to that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for your answers. That's great.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, the 2016 Better, okay, I think we covered this one, navigating and advising. Okay, the 2016 Better Together Collaborative Activities Grant. These went out last July. They'll be wrapping up the end of June. Just a reminder, the final narrative will be due July 14th, and that was sent out to all grant recipients. And that's basically it. Just a reminder. Bridge to Benefits Implementation Grants. Small grants went out. Again, these are due, the grant will end June 30th. And then I have a note there regarding the Minnesota Workforce Council Association will require an invoice prior to June 30th. And they'll be sending out a form via email to those recipients. The 2014-2017 Transitions 3.0 three-year initiative will be coming to a close June 30th. The final report will be due July 14th, 2017. All reports must be submitted and approved before the remaining balance of their federal transitions money will be available in CSRS Financial. Lori, I need to check with you. The tentative date for making that available is July 28th, 2017.
Yes,
that's all right.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Or around that date, approximately around that time.
We do have a question going back to the Better Together.
Oh, sure.
And that's from
Susie. Yeah.
She said that she didn't get that narrative email. That's for the report that's due in July. And who across those grantees, who did it go to?
It went to the people that submitted that. And Susie, I'm reading your chat, and I'm sure it did go to Sally. And I apologize. I will send that out to you. That's just there's a Sally Evans and a Susie Evans, and somehow we're getting our emails mixed up. The transitions aid for 2017-2019. A few updates on this. This round of transitions aid will be for 2 years instead of 3 years due to funding uncertainty at the federal level. It's going to be the same amount of funding as last year, dedicated to transitions aid. However, some of the funding is going to go directly to consortia that choose to participate in transitions-related professional development. And Astrid will be talking about that shortly. Well, I'll let Astrid cover that. So each region will be getting $45,000, and then the remaining funds will be used to offset that professional development. The purpose of the transitions aid is, I'm going to summarize this, but basically, it's not a one-time effort funding to improve short-term effectiveness, but it's a continuous improvement strategy towards the creation of a sustainable and effective transitioning for adult learners. And it's to build capacity around transitioning learners to training, employment, and post-secondary. And the activities are designed to help strengthen transition skills, competencies, and abilities and expertise in the ABE community. Transitions aid is not intended to be the only source of ABE funding supporting transitions activities. And I want to stress that because on a survey we sent out, some individuals, some of the comments that came in very much gave the impression that people thought this is the only funding that we can use to do transitions activities. That is not the case, and it should not be the case, that this is just capacity building funding around transitions. You should be leveraging your state and federal funding as well as partner resources to support the activities. A few things on regional transitions coordination. How a transition region coordinates their activities is the decision for the ABE managers in the region. It's been done differently across the state, but that is a decision that the managers need to be making. A few other things that we want to stress: that we are going to continue with the regional approach, and that the regional plans for this upcoming year are going to be due the end of September, so that's going to give some planning time for everyone. If you have an activity that's you want to start right away in July, other than planning activities and reporting activities, if it's like a project activity, please contact me for approval first. PD.
So before we jump into professional development, let's just quickly take some time for questions from the audience about any of the transitions topics. Again, to ask questions, you can raise your hand or you can chat in the function chat box. And I think I just unmuted you, Russ.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Brad. Thank you, everyone. Initially, when the communication was shared about this, there were 3 areas that were identified that were appropriate for transition funding or as part of the plans. One of them was professional development, which you've already discussed. It looks as if you're holding back that $5,000. Are you looking to pool all that money into a larger pool, having the flexibility to utilize it where the training desires exist? Is that sort of the thought, or is it really the $5,000 tied and committed to each of the regions?
Yep. Yeah, Russ, Todd. Actually, we're going to take that chunk of money off the top of, we have 10 regions. We've been dedicating $50,000 per region, so a grand total of $500,000. So we're going to be taking $50,000 off the top of that, leaving $450,000, so that's the $45,000 per region. Right. And actually, we will be using that pot of money, that chunk that we take right off the top, to support participation on the part of staff from any consortia that choose to participate in the career pathway professional development that Atlas is rolling out this next year. So
Okay.
Ashley's going to talk a little bit more about what that training is. So the net effect of that would be, if you have a region that heavily participates in that professional development, the net amount of money coming into the region might still be $50,000 or perhaps
Or more.
a little more.
Yeah, I got it.
Or it might be a little bit less than that, just depending on that participation.
And then Teresa asked, can you explain more about the portion of the money for transitions that can go to PD work? In addition to the money that we're setting aside to support the two specific career pathway PD initiatives, you can still build in activities within your 45,000 that target other professional development activities focused on transitions.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
and in fact, I think Julie has in mind a couple of opportunities that we might try and facilitate happening over the course of that 2-year period, and we hope to get you some more information about that in the near future. But yes, it does not preclude, really that, just to emphasize what Julie was saying earlier, that money, that transitions funding is really ideally meant to be capacity building money. It's not meant to be just the sole source of money available for doing some sort of ongoing transition-related activities. And so, I mean, it could be part of an ongoing activity if really somehow that's part of building capacity. But I think as long as the intent and the spirit behind how the money is being spent is focused on building capacity to do transitions work, that's the appropriate use of the money.
So a couple follow-up questions. To the degree that the local managers believe that there's value in like regional transition coordination, then that kind of support could be built into the plan. I understand.
Yes.
Kind of understood that.
Absolutely.
Then the second piece has to do with some type of piloted projects or some type of building of projects that you're working towards sustainability. Is that correct?
Also, yes. Yep, also appropriate.
All right. The other...
And then as
okay.
Jerry brought up, also professional development.
Right, right. So then...
that might be three examples of kinds of things that money would be used to fund.
Great. So when you talk about a 2-year cycle, am I right to understand that come September, when the plan is due, you're really writing nearly a 2-year plan, or will it be annual?
No, essentially it would be nearly a 2-year
plan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's really $90,000 over the course of those 2 years. Is that accurate?
That is a reasonable assumption, but always with the caveat, we do not know what's going to happen in that federal fiscal 18, which is our 18-19 fiscal year budget.
But you can initially plan for that.
But you could initially plan for that. Just be mindful that it's what happens with that federal money a year after, the year after this year. This coming year, we have level funding. Open question for the next year. Our best guess is that President's budget's going to have maybe a 13.5% cut. But there's a lot of direction, that could even obviously be greater, or it could be less. We just don't know.
Given the dynamic nature of this work, is it right to assume that after the first year, you build a plan, and then along the way, there's going to be room for some flexibility to adjust the plan year 2, based on not only the fact is there money, but also what are sort of the things that have bubbled up that would make sense to perhaps revise your plan to take advantage of the circumstances that arise.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a possibility, Russ. And I think it has been, pretty flexible. One thing we were very intentional about doing is making sure that when this was funded with WIA incentive funding, we could only promise, like projects that could be done in a year. And
Right.
that was very difficult for people to get a project up and running and going and completed within 1 year. Well, now we're saying, okay, we're giving you the time to plan for it, to implement it, to evaluate it. And if stuff comes up along the way that you need to change, that's fine.
Yes.
You just need to send any approval through, and 9 times out of 10, it's approved.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
It's actually 10 times out of 10, it's approved.
Well, thank you. No, I could just speak for us, and I think it's would be echoed around the regions is the flexibility is greatly appreciated, because there are circumstances that come up that you just want to take advantage of, right? And conversely, there are situations that arise where you think there was going to be something incredible happening, and some things occur, like people depart from a particular partnership, and then it's no longer. So that flexibility is great.
Okay, good to hear.
Other questions about transitions for Julie and Todd? Okay, we'll move on. If you do have further questions, go ahead and put those in the chat and we'll respond to them.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
let's talk about PD.
yes, let's talk about PD. A couple of reminders here. As you all know, Summer Institute is coming up in August. Just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of the various pre-conference workshop options we have going, delivered on the afternoon, evening of August 15th and morning Wednesday, August 16th. We have our ABE Foundation session, formerly known as New Teacher Orientation, which is an orientation for folks who are new to the field, teachers, managers, or support staff, or staff who could use a refresher, an overview of the basics. And then we will be running 2 other pre-conference sessions. One will be a CCRS Foundations English Language Arts and Literacy session, running Tuesday and Wednesday, and a Math CCRS Foundations, Tuesday and Wednesday. Those CCRS Foundations are available online, but if you're able to participate in person, it's always a richer experience. So encourage you, if you have staff who have not yet participated in that foundational CCRS training, this is a great opportunity to get them trained. We also have a new opportunity coming up this September. The National Pro-Literacy Conference on Adult Education is going to be held in Bloomington, Minnesota this year, September 27th and 30th. And our colleagues over at the Minnesota Literacy Council have been working with Pro-Literacy to arrange to hold their annual volunteer management conference as a pre-conference to the Pro-Literacy Conference. So typically this conference is held in late November, early December. We're going to attach it to Pro-Literacy on that Wednesday, and have the opportunity to interact with folks from all around the country, and then continue on to the conference if people choose to do so. Registration is already available on the Pro-Literacy website. And then we just have a few announcements about opportunities for next year that are now open. Our next year's CCRS implementation cohort application is now available on the Atlas website. You can just go to the PD calendar and look at the due date, which is June 9th. This is an opportunity for people, program teams, to get training on aligning curriculum, instruction, and observation to our new standards. In order to go through this training, staff do need that CCRS foundations prior to participation. And just as a reminder, anyone who is looking to become an adult diploma program in the future will need to have gone through the CCRS cohort training prior to launch. So this is a program application. We ideally like teams of at least 1 administrator, 1 ELA teacher, one math teacher. For our smaller programs, we can be flexible with that. And you can also choose to participate as a consortia of programs, if that makes the most sense. So the CCRS training sequence that you can all be thinking about is part 1, which is CCRS Foundations, that all staff at some point need to go through to get training on the ELA and math shifts and math practices. And then the second stage of training is what's happening through the cohort. So learning about aligning resources, aligning lessons, aligning student tasks, and observing standards-based lessons. So that application is available. Feel free to contact me with any questions. And then Julie was speaking about some new adult career pathway professional development that's going to be offered next year through ATLAS. 2 different opportunities that are going to be supported through some of that transitions funding. We have an adult career pathway program development cohort that is going to be a year-long cohort for ABE administrators, helping folks work together to develop and sustain effective adult career pathways programming, working with partners, building enrollments, learning about IET models, etc. And then another cohort focused on adult career pathway course design. This is targeted at instructors or others who are responsible for developing or improving existing adult career pathway courses. That application is due June 16th. So both of those applications can be found on the ATLAS website. If you go to the due dates, you will find information and the applications that you can download there. And again, we will be supporting participation in those 2 initiatives by amending the grant awards to consortia that have participants going through either one of those initiatives. There's more detail on the applications, and you can contact us if you need any clarity on that. Jill's asking, can someone do both of the PT cohorts? Yes. However, are you talking about both adult career pathway cohorts, Jill? Yes. Okay. So yes, I would just be mindful of your time and availability. They both are going to be very focused on development, program development in the one case and course development in the other. So just be mindful of how much time you have. You may decide to, as a manager, go through the program development cohort and identify another staff person who is responsible for designing or improving the course to go through the course design cohort. And that might be a good way to build a local team and spread out the work in your staff.
Meg had a question about the additional funds, those that roughly 50,000 that were, is it 50? Yeah, 50,000 that we're holding back for this adult career pathway PD. Could you provide some detail there?
Yes, so those funds are going to support participants in 2 ways. So travel costs for folks who are traveling more than 100 miles round trip to the face-to-face elements of those trainings will have those costs reimbursed. And then there is a stipend or possibility for being reimbursed for staffing costs of up to $400 for the program development cohort per person, and I believe $200 for course design cohort per person. And then Karen says we have someone who is doing both coordinating and teaching. So again, you certainly are welcome to participate in both, but on both of those applications, there is information about the estimated time commitment and the different activities. So just be mindful of whether you will be, one person will be able to manage both of those. And we have another question. Stacy putting out to the group, has anyone attended the Pro Literacy Conference before? Any feedback? I attended about 10 years ago. I have not been recently. I know that some of the Minnesota Literacy Council staff have been in recent years. I don't know if Eric or Kathy are on our call today. If not, you might want to contact them directly for some feedback on that conference. Any other questions related to the CCRS cohort or the adult career pathway options coming next year? And then finally, just wanted to remind everyone, Liz Andrus has been doing the rounds at our regionals, sharing the amazing new adult career pathway resource library that she's been working on over the course of the year. The goal is to have 50 curricula put up there by the end of this year. So all of the materials that were previously on MinRock that had been shared among the RTCs and on different sites have now been evaluated and summarized and linked on the Atlas Adult Career Pathway Resource Library. So if you haven't been there yet, go check it out. There's some really great stuff available. And if you are in the process of developing something, or if you have staff working on curriculum, please do get in touch with the folks at Atlas so we can get that up there and share it with the rest of the field.
Excellent. Thank you, Astrid. Our final topic of the day is adult secondary credentials, but before we do that, let's make sure we don't have any other PD questions from folks. So Teresa's asking if other topics can be included in the library.
Atlas actually does have a number of resource libraries. This is just the newest edition. They have an evidence-based reading, writing, they're working on an ESL library, there are various GED topics. So if you go onto the Atlas website and click on the resources tab at the top, you'll see the range of different resource libraries that are available. Lots of great resources in all of them.
And Teresa's saying in particular they have a leadership training curriculum. I guess that would be something you'd want to connect with Atlas on and see where, excuse me, where that could be possibly housed within the resource library.
Yep.
Or libraries, I should say. Yeah, I'm not sure either, Teresa. Well, again, Atlas would have to help you figure that out. Okay, now within adult secondary credentials, I'd like to talk about standard adult diploma and GED briefly on each. First, the one announcement about standard adult diploma is that we have some new programs that are getting up and running. In fact, we're starting the training. It's a 2-day training, and it's starting tomorrow. We have Adult Options in Education, Lakes and Prairie ABE, Northwest Service Cooperative, and some additional Department of Corrections facilities that are going through the training, in addition to new staff at some of our current operating programs. So that'll be a great group to kind of dive into the an overview and the initial logistics of running a standard adult high school diploma program. I did also want to note regarding standard adult diploma that there will be applications for the next year for either new or expanding programs, and that will be published in winter of 2008. And in order to apply, applicants must have participated in the CCRS cohort training. The tentative training for the next year is May 10th and 11th of 2018. On the GED side, I wanted to make sure that we gave a couple minutes to talk about GED Grad Day coming up next week. So next week is Spirit Week, and which culminates to GED Grad Day on Thursday, May 18th. What they're really encouraging is to have folks share some of those hashtags on social media. Motivation Monday, Transformation Tuesday, and GED Grad Day. Special note about GED Grad Day is every time that hashtag is used in social media, GED Testing Service is making a $1 donation to the National Center for Families Learning. So that is exciting. And that is a great use of, or great promotion of our GED grads, their stories, and some of the amazing work that you're doing. For any additional information about GED Grad Day, please go to the GED Testing Center webpage, and they have a lot more information there and more advice about how you and your students can participate in this. We do have a question from Jill about the National GED Conference. There is a National GED Conference coming up in July, and I have attended it, and we usually have about a small handful of folks that have attended that conference. And And so that they have stuff specifically targeting state administrators, but they do have some more state-focused PD, or I should say local practitioner-focused PD, similar to what they've provided at the at Summer Institute, but more in-depth, a couple more days. The conference this year is at the end of July, the last week of July, and it is in Dallas. And we can send another announcement about that coming forward, or you can look to your GED announcements from GED Testing Service about the actual conference itself. But I was just going to say, Jill, typically we have about 5 to 10 people from the state of Minnesota that go to that conference. The other thing I wanted to talk about regarding GED is that there are a couple GED-related bills in our state legislature right now. And so the two bills that I specifically just wanted to bring up to folks, again, noting that neither of these have actually passed or become law yet, but that it's quite possible that these will both pass. First is the subsidy. This year, there isn't a proposed subsidy to fully pay for the test. They're actually going back, instead of allocating $245,000 like they did this year to pay for the entire test, they're proposing to allocate $125,000. That would be a subsidy of up to $40 per GED tester, which would equate to $10 per first test in each subject, which is kind of where we were before we had the full free starting just over a year ago. So that is what it looks like the governor and the legislature are kind of initially settling on. And so we'll likely have that in operation in July, starting July of 2017 here, if this bill passes. The second bill to note is that there's a bill in there right now to remove the term GED from state statute and replace it with state-approved secondary credential exam. And so that is currently in place, but it's just helpful to know the implications of this bill. What this will likely mean is that there will be, if this bill passes, it will kickstart a 2-year task force that will examine all of the potential tests that folks could use, that could be potentially used, and then discuss whether we would approve as a task force or recommend as a task force a single test in operation or multiple tests. And if we want whether we're looking at single tests or multiple tests, what are the criteria that we would want to use to evaluate the test? And this would likely lead to an RFP process where any potential test vendor could promote or submit their test for consideration. We would have to do a test selection recommendation process, and then a transition plan to either professionally develop training for the new test and setting up the entire new test structure and to replace or be offered in addition to the GED. So like I said, this is likely to be, if this bill passes, there will likely be a 2-year process that would result from this. Again, details are fuzzy because the bill has not yet passed, and details might be more forthcoming at Summer Institute if the bill passes. How'd I do on that, Todd?
Good.
Okay, good. Any questions about the GED or any GED-related state legislation or anything else in there?
You got it well said.
Oh, thank you, Karen. Any questions about GED or diploma? Again, if you have any questions, you can raise your hand or use the chat function to enter any questions. We did want to announce the 2017-2018 web chats. Mark your calendars. We are going to do we're planning on doing 4 web chats this year: Wednesday, July 12th, Wednesday, September 20th, Wednesday, January 10th, and Wednesday, May 9th. Again, tentatively targeting the 1 to 2:30 time frame for this. So that is what we're doing for web chats, so mark your calendars. So, and I also just wanted to make sure to thank you and have a great spring. And now let's dive into other questions. So we got a question submitted from Karen, who was asking about how many diplomas have been granted to date for the Minnesota Standard Adult High School Diploma. Are we at 300 yet? No, we're not at 300.
Excuse me. I am looking at our records, but I'm not sure this is quite an up-to-date number yet. So I think we are right around 250.
Around 250?
Yep.
So to date, we've issued roughly 250 standard adult high school diplomas.
Yep.
But just a context on that is that exceeds the largest number of credit completion diplomas that we've ever had reported in the system. So the standard adult diploma is now essentially a bigger diploma completion program than credit completion. And if you put the two of them together, it really is amounting to a substantial alternative pathway for folks, certainly as an alternative to the GED. So it's been a great success so far. And actually also another thing that we're kind of excited about is we are working very hard to have a component in place that will be communicating GED passer data back to SID so that programs will have access to information about everyone who's passed, and also a mechanism to use SID to transfer adult secondary credential transcript information up to the state, and then get information back from us once someone has completed. So both very exciting.
I just did some quick math, and we have awarded 249.
249
Yep.
exact diplomas at this
Yep.
to date. Excellent. Okay, let's open it up to general questions at this point. What general additional questions do you have for any of us at the state office or for any of your colleagues that are listening in? To ask any questions, you can raise your hand, click and raise your hand on the little toolbar, or you can also chat in your question.
Teresa asked, did you just say that we may be able to see all GED test scores in the future?
Yeah, so you won't be able to see GED test scores. What you will be able to see is whether or not someone has actually passed the GED and been awarded a state credential. The scores themselves are protected under FERPA, and we don't have a mechanism currently in place for being able to share that information, but information regarding whether or not someone has actually passed, or I should say information that someone has passed, under FERPA is considered roster data. It's just as if you publish a list of graduates for a graduation ceremony. And so that's the information that we'll be able to feed back to SID.
Teresa asked, is that for sure?
Yeah, it's actually in process, Teresa. We're working on the logistics of the data exchange between SID and the state GED records repository right now. That's something we just literally launched that piece of the data system work this week.
In time for this year's graduation ceremony?
No, not
no,
in time
not
for this
for this
year's
year.
graduation ceremonies, I'm afraid. Yeah, I'd say operational, probably working well, maybe sometime late summer, that we'll have all the kinks worked out, and you should have a pretty good data set. What we'll be doing is exchanging data going back to inception of the current 2014 GED. So from January 1, 2014 going forward, and then on a continuous basis from then on.
But note that that's only for students that you've served in your ABE program.
Correct.
Tammy asked, will that include testers that take the GED test in bordering states?
It will not. I'm afraid we don't have exchange agreements with the bordering states. So while we are able to provide the subsidy at a handful of testing sites that are heavily used by Minnesota testers, we don't have a data exchange reciprocity with either of the Dakotas or, well, Iowa is now a high-set state, so I'm not sure you could take a GED in Iowa anymore.
And Wisconsin is a closed state.
And Wisconsin is a closed state, so it's really the issue is on the western border with the Dakotas There are a couple of heavily used test centers in the Dakotas, and it may be that at some point in the future we'll have access to that information, but certainly not in the near-term future, not within the next year, for example.
Any other questions?